The humid, heavy scent of fermenting grapes used to be the smell of home, now it just smelled like a crime scene. Celine walked through the gauntlet of black-clad men flanking the driveway of the Shin estate, her heels clicking against the pavement like a countdown. Behind her, her father, a man who once called Duyun a thug with no future, shuffled with his head bowed, his pride as empty as their family's bank accounts. The armed men lining the gravel path looked like sentinels of a dark kingdom, their presence a wall of barely restrained violence. Each step felt like walking toward the edge of a cliff, terrifying, inevitable, necessary. 10 years ago, Celine had been the top student with a bright future, and Duyun had been the delinquent boy who looked at her like she was the only star in a dark sky. 10 years since her parents dragged her away from Napa Valley, from the lanky Korean boy who'd kissed her under the stars on prom night and whispered promises her family would never let him keep. Now she was walking back into his world. Not as a girl with dreams, but as a woman with nothing left to lose. The massive bronze doors swung open with an ominous creak. The interior of the Shin estate was a study in controlled opulence, dark wood, leather, and the kind of quiet that only extreme wealth could buy. But beneath the civilized veneer, Celine felt the pulse of something far more dangerous. The armed guards at every corner, the weight of unseen eyes tracking their movement, the way even the air seemed to hold its breath. Her father's dress shoes clicked nervously against marble while priceless art watched from the walls. Celine's heart hammered against her ribs, her cotton dress suddenly feeling too thin, too vulnerable. She'd chosen modest clothing for this meeting, a conscious decision to appear respectable, desperate, worthy of mercy. But when the double doors opened to reveal the man waiting inside, she realized. Nothing could have prepared her for this. Duyun sat behind a desk of black walnut, and the boy she remembered had been completely obliterated by the man before her. He'd always been tall, but now he was massive, shoulders straining against his tailored black shirt, arms corded with muscle beneath rolled sleeves. Intricate tattoos crawled up his forearms, disappearing beneath expensive fabric, hints of a dangerous life written on his skin. But it was his face that made her breath catch. The softness of youth had been carved away, leaving sharp angles and a jaw shaped with ruthless precision. His dark eyes held a predatory stillness as they fixed on her, and she felt the impact of his gaze like a physical touch. This wasn't just handsome, this was the kind of devastating, dangerous beauty that made empires fall and women forget their own names. He didn't stand, didn't smile, didn't acknowledge her father at all. He only looked at her. Celine. Her name in his mouth, after 10 years of silence, was a brand. His voice had deepened, roughened, carrying an authority that made her spine straighten involuntarily. You look exactly the same. It was a lie. She'd changed, the softness of 18 traded for the harder edges of 28. But his eyes tracked over her face, her curvy figure, like he was cataloging every detail, every difference, every year that should have been his. Duyun. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Thank you for seeing us. Her father cleared his throat, stepping forward with outstretched hand. Mr. Shin, I appreciate. Wait in the courtyard. Duyun's words were quiet, but they carried the weight of absolute command. His eyes never left Celine. I'll speak with your daughter alone. But I'm the one who. The courtyard. Duyun's gaze finally slid to her father, and Celine watched him physically recoil from whatever he saw there. My men will show you where. It wasn't a suggestion. Her father looked at her, panic flickering across his features, but she nodded. They'd come here for help. They had no leverage, no bargaining power. If Duyun wanted her alone, refusing wasn't an option. The doors closed behind her father with a finality that made her stomach clench. Silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. The afternoon sun slanted through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting Duyun in harsh light that somehow only emphasized the dangerous beauty of him. He stood slowly, and the movement was all controlled power, a predator rising. Tell me what happened. He moved around the desk with the fluid grace of someone utterly comfortable with his own strength. All of it. Celine's hands twisted together. Where to even begin? The humiliation, the betrayal, the systematic destruction of everything her family had built? My parents, she swallowed hard. After we left Napa, they were determined I'd end up with someone respectable. Someone with a future they approved of. Duyun's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. They introduced me to Dr. Damon Stone. Successful physician, established practice, everything they wanted for me. The bitterness in her voice surprised even her. We got engaged last year. She watched Du-yoon's hands curl into fists at his sides, the only outward sign of reaction. Turns out, Damon wasn't a doctor. Not really. His credentials were forged, his practice a front. He was working with a cartel, a predatory operation that targets generational landowners. They use litigation, forged documents, legal manipulation. They're experts at staying just inside the law while destroying families. And your vineyard? Du-yoon's voice was dangerously soft. They have it. Or they will in 3 days. Damon emptied our accounts, disappeared, and now the cartel is moving in with a mountain of paperwork and lawyers. My father tried fighting it through legal channels, but they have an army of attorneys. We're destitute. We're going to lose everything, 100 years of James' family legacy gone. She forced herself to meet his eyes. The law can't help us. We need someone who operates outside those boundaries. You need a monster. Du-yoon took a step closer, and she caught his scent, expensive cologne cut with something darker, more primal. You need me to do what your respectable doctor couldn't. What your father's lawyers can't. What the law won't. Yes. The word came out as barely a whisper. He moved closer still, invading her space in a way that should have been threatening but instead made heat coil low in her belly. His hand reached out, and she froze as his fingers caught her left hand, turning it over in the light. His thumb traced the pale band of skin on her ring finger where Damon's engagement ring had sat for months. The touch was feather-light, but she felt it everywhere. He put his mark on you. Du-yoon's voice had gone soft, lethal. This piece of shit fraud put a ring on your finger and planned to steal from you the whole time. Du-yoon. Your father called me a delinquent. Said I'd ruin you, drag you down to my level. His eyes lifted to hers, and the intensity there stole her breath. He took you away from me because I wasn't good enough. I wasn't respectable. I wasn't safe. He stepped even closer, his massive frame towering over her petite form, and she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. And now here you are, 10 years later, coming to the delinquent for help because the respectable man destroyed you. Shame and anger and something far more complicated twisted in her chest. I know how it looks. Do you? His free hand came up to cup her jaw, thumb brushing her cheekbone with a gentleness that contradicted everything about him. Do you know how it looks to see you walk back into my life, needing me to clean up someone else's mess? To know that for 10 years, you were out there living a life I should have been part of. Her breath hitched. My parents made their choice. And you let them. There was no accusation in his voice, just stated fact. You could have fought for us, Celine. You could have said no. I was 18. So was I. His thumb traced her lower lip, and she shivered. But I would have fought. I would have burned down the world to keep you. The raw honesty in his words made her throat tight. I'm sorry. I don't want your apology. He released her abruptly, stepping back, and she almost swayed from the loss of his touch. Come with me. He led her through a hidden door behind a bookshelf, down a stone staircase that descended into cool darkness. With each step, the temperature dropped, and when they reached the bottom, she gasped. The private wine cellar stretched before them, a cathedral of rare vintages. Climate-controlled, perfectly organized, worth millions. But Du-yoon barely glanced at the bottles as he guided her to a leather chair in the center of the space. Sit. She sat. He poured 2 glasses of red from a label she'd only ever seen behind glass, then settled into the chair across from her, his long legs stretched out, completely at ease in a way that made her hyper-aware of her own tension. I'm going to get your dirt back, Celine. He took a slow sip of wine, his eyes never leaving hers. Every acre, every vine, every building. The cartel will wish they'd never heard the name James. Relief flooded through her so intensely she felt dizzy. Thank you. We can't pay you back right away, but I don't want your money. Then what? I want the 10 years your father stole from us. He set his glass down with deliberate care. I'm not doing this for him. I'm not doing this for your family's legacy. I'm doing this to buy back the decade I lost with you. Her heart slammed against her ribs. What does that mean? It means I'll destroy the cartel. I'll make sure they never trouble your family again. I'll hand your father back his precious vineyard." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and the intensity of his focus made her feel pinned in place. "But you," he continued, voice low, "you'd stay here. With me. For your safety. You can't just. I'm not dictating anything." His tone stayed maddeningly calm. "I'm telling you what's coming. Your father will ask you to stay here the moment he realizes how deep this goes. He'll hand you over to the man he once warned you about, because he's desperate enough to trade anything to save that vineyard." A faint, humorless smile touched his mouth. "I'd rather you hear it from me than be cornered by him." Celine's breath hitched. "And if I say no?" He took a moment before answering. When he did, his voice was steady. "Then I help your father as far as I'm willing to, and you walk away untouched. No pressure. No debt. No strings." Her fingers tightened around the glass. "And if I say yes?" His gaze held hers, unwavering. "Then you stay here because you chose it. Not because he pushed you. Not because you were cornered. Because you decided this is where you want to be." He leaned back slightly, eyes darkening. "But understand something, Celine, once you walk away, I don't reopen doors. Choice cuts both ways." The air between them crackled with tension so thick she could taste it. "How long?" she whispered. "As long as it takes." He stood, towering over her, and extended his hand. "Come back upstairs. Your father's been in the sun long enough. Let's go tell him the good news." She stared at his outstretched hand, scarred knuckles, elegant fingers, the promise and threat contained in that simple gesture. "All right," she breathed. "I'll stay." She placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, warm and strong, and she felt the decision lock into place like a key turning in a lock she'd been running from for a decade. When they emerged back into the office, Do-yoon made a single phone call. 3 words in Korean, then he hung up. "It's done," he said simply. "The wheels are in motion." Celine had thought she understood power. She'd seen wealth, witnessed influence, observed how money could open doors and smooth paths. But watching Do-yoon dismantle the cartel was like witnessing a force of nature, beautiful, terrible, and utterly unstoppable. Her father had agreed to Do-yoon's terms with an eagerness that made her nauseous. No questions about what moving in meant. No concern for her safety or autonomy. Just desperate gratitude and the calculation that having his daughter in Shin Do-yoon's bed was better than losing the vineyard. She'd moved into the estate 3 days ago, and every morning she woke up in a bedroom suite larger than her old apartment, surrounded by luxury that felt like a gilded cage. Except Do-yoon hadn't tried to cage her at all. He'd given her complete freedom of the grounds. No guards following her. No restrictions on her movement. The only thing he'd asked was that she let him know if she planned to leave the property. For safety, he'd said, his eyes dark with an intensity she couldn't quite read. And every evening, he appeared at her door for dinner. Tonight, he'd chosen the terrace overlooking the valley, and Celine tried not to stare as he moved around the space with unconscious grace. He'd shed his suit jacket, and the black dress shirt he wore was tailored to emphasize the aggressive musculature of his frame. The top buttons were undone, revealing the hint of more tattoos across his collarbone. "The cartel's lawyers are panicking." He poured her wine with the expertise of someone who'd studied the art. 2 of their senior partners were arrested this morning. Financial fraud, money laundering, connections to organized crime. "How did you?" "I have people who are very good at finding things that should stay hidden." His smile was sharp enough to cut. "Everyone has secrets, Celine. The cartel's lawyers built their success on being just barely legitimate. My people simply found where they crossed the line." He settled into the chair across from her, and she was struck again by how utterly comfortable he was in his own skin, in his power. There was no arrogance, no need to posture. Just quiet, absolute confidence. 3 more firms have withdrawn from representing them, he continued. Word is spreading that taking on the James case means making an enemy of the Shin syndicate. By the end of the week, they'll have no legal protection. And then they'll be vulnerable. And my people will handle the rest. The casual way he discussed what was essentially warfare made her shiver. This was the world he inhabited, one where legal battles were just the opening move, where true power operated in shadows and violence was always an option. You're staring. His voice held a hint of amusement. Sorry, she looked down at her plate. You're just so different from the boy I remember. Did you expect me to stay the same? He took a sip of wine, his eyes tracking her over the rim of the glass. You left. I had to become someone who could survive without you. The honesty in his words made her chest ache. Tell me about your life. He set down his glass. The 10 years. I want to know everything. Do-yoon. Everything, Celine. It wasn't a request. College, jobs, relationships, the places you lived. I want to catalog every moment I missed, every change, every experience that shaped you into who you are now. Over the next hour, he interrogated her with a focus that was both flattering and unnerving. What had she studied? Where had she traveled? What wine had she fallen in love with in France? When had she gotten her sommelier certification? Had Damon been her first serious relationship after him? That last question hung in the air, weighted with implications. He was the first person my parents approved of, she said carefully. The first respectable option after you. That's not what I asked. She met his eyes. Yes. He was the first serious relationship after you. Something flickered across Do-yoon's face, satisfaction, possessiveness, a dark pleasure that made heat pool in her belly. Did you love him? I thought I did. Or maybe I just loved the idea of making my parents happy. She pushed food around her plate. Turns out, I didn't know him at all. You knew me. The simple statement held a universe of meaning. I did, she whispered. I did know you. And you know me now. He stood, moving around the table with predatory grace. Come. I want to show you something. He led her through the estate to a wing she hadn't explored yet. When he opened the double doors, she gasped. The room was a professional tasting room, temperature-controlled, properly lit, with a beautiful bar of polished wood and glass storage for hundreds of bottles. But what made her throat tight was the attention to detail. The specific lighting that she'd once mentioned was perfect for evaluating color. The spittoons positioned at exactly the right height. The reference books she'd told him about years ago, now arranged on shelves. How did you? I remember everything you ever told me, Celine. He stood behind her, close enough that she could feel his heat. Every dream, every goal, every passion. You said you wanted a space like this someday. Now you have it. She turned to face him, and the intensity in his eyes stole her breath. Why are you doing this? Because I've spent 10 years building an empire with nothing but the ghost of you to motivate me. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone. Because I told myself that if I ever got you back, I'd give you everything I couldn't when we were 18. Do-yoon. Because you're mine, Celine. You always have been. And now that I have you here, I'm going to spend every day proving that the boy you knew is still inside the monster everyone fears. His thumb traced her lower lip, and she shivered at the contact. I'm not going to rush you, he continued, his voice dropping to a rough whisper. I'm not going to push you into anything you're not ready for. But make no mistake, I want you. I want to know every inch of the woman you've become. I want to touch you, taste you, claim you in every way possible. Her breath came faster, heat flooding through her body. And when you're ready, he leaned down until his lips were a breath away from hers. When you come to me, I'm going to make up for every single night I didn't have you in my bed. He didn't kiss her. Instead, he stepped back, and she almost whimpered at the loss. Good night, Celine. His smile was pure sin. Sleep well. He left her standing in the tasting room, body aching with want, mind reeling from the promise in his words. The man was going to destroy her. And she was going to let him. The next few days followed a pattern that was both comforting and maddening. Do-yoon was everywhere and nowhere, a constant presence she felt even when she couldn't see him. She'd catch glimpses of him watching her from his office window as she walked the grounds. He'd appear at mealtimes with food he'd personally selected for her. He'd leave books he thought she'd enjoy on her nightstand. He was courting her, she realized. Slowly, patiently, with an intensity that should have been overwhelming but instead felt inevitable. And the cartel was crumbling. News reached them daily, another lawyer arrested, another front company exposed, another piece of their operation dismantled. Do-yoon's network worked with surgical precision, and Celine began to understand the true scope of his power. This wasn't just local influence. The Shin Syndicate had reach that extended across continents, resources that made the cartel look like amateurs playing at organized crime. One evening, she found him in his office, surrounded by documents and looking dangerously beautiful in the lamplight. His shirt was unbuttoned, tie discarded, and those tattoos she'd been dying to trace were partially visible. "Can't sleep." He looked up, and despite the late hour, his eyes were sharp and alert. "Needed wine." She held up the bottle she'd retrieved from the cellar. I didn't mean to interrupt." "You're not interrupting." He pushed back from the desk, gesturing to the leather sofa by the window. "Come sit with me." She curled up on one end of the sofa, and he settled on the other, close but not touching. The intimacy of it, the quiet hour, the dim lighting, the two of them alone, felt more significant than any physical contact. "Tell me about the tattoos," she said softly. His eyebrow arched. "Curious." "I've been curious about a lot of things." He smiled, slow and devastating, then began unbuttoning his shirt fully. She watched, transfixed, as he revealed the intricate artwork covering his torso. Dragons, flowers, geometric patterns, all woven together in a tapestry of ink that must have taken years to complete. "Each one represents something," he said, guiding her hand to trace a particular design over his ribs. "This dragon, I got it the day I became the head of the syndicate. I was 22. Her fingers trembled against his skin, feeling the hard muscle beneath, the heat of him. "So young." "I had to be. My father was dying, and the organization needed someone strong enough to hold it together." His eyes locked on hers. "I became the monster everyone needed me to be." She traced higher, following the curve of another design. "And this one? A reminder." His voice had gone rough. "Of what I lost. What I was determined to reclaim." Her hand stilled. "Me? You?" The confession hung between them, raw and honest. Celine's heart hammered as she looked at this man, this beautiful, dangerous, devoted man, who'd apparently been carrying her in his skin for a decade. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "How to be what you need. You already are." His hand covered hers, pressing her palm flat against his chest where she could feel his heartbeat. "You think I need you to be something other than exactly what you are? Soft where I'm hard. Warm where I'm cold. Light in all the places I'm darkness." He pulled her closer, until she was half in his lap, surrounded by his strength. "I don't need you to be anyone but Celine James. The girl who looked at the delinquent kid and saw something worth caring about. The woman who walked back into my life and trusted me to protect her." His lips brushed her temple, and she shivered. "I just need you to be mine." This time when he kissed her, it wasn't a promise, it was a claim. His mouth was hot and demanding, tasting her like he'd been starving for it, and she melted into him with a whimper. One hand fisted in her hair, angling her head exactly where he wanted, while the other splayed across her lower back, pulling her impossibly closer. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. "Bed," he growled. "Now. Before I take you on this couch like I've been fantasizing about for days." "Maybe I want." He stood, lifting her with effortless strength, and she gasped as her legs wrapped around his waist automatically. "Not your first time back in my arms." He carried her toward the door, his grip on her possessive and sure. "When I finally have you, Celine, it's going to be in my bed. And I'm going to take my time adoring every inch of you." He carried her to her suite, set her down gently inside the doorway, and pressed one more searing kiss to her lips before stepping back. "Soon," he promised. "Very soon." Then he was gone, leaving her aching and wanting and completely wrecked. The dawn broke blood-red over Napa Valley, and Celine woke to the sound of her phone exploding with panicked messages from her father. "They're here. Armed men. Documents. They're trying to force us out. Do something." Her hands shook as she called Du-yoon, but he answered on the first ring, his voice calm and utterly unsurprised. "I know. Get dressed. We're leaving in 5 minutes." The drive to the vineyard was tense and silent. Du-yoon drove with one hand on the wheel, the other holding hers, his thumb stroking her knuckles in a gesture that was somehow both comforting and possessive. Behind them, 3 black SUVs followed, his men, armed and ready. When they pulled up to the James family vineyard, chaos greeted them. 20 men in tactical gear surrounded the property, several holding rifles, while others brandished legal documents and threatened Celine's parents with immediate eviction. Her father looked 10 years older, her mother was crying, and the century-old legacy of the James family vineyard was minutes from being stolen. Duyun didn't rush. He stepped out of the car with the unhurried grace of someone who knew the outcome was already decided, then came around to open Celine's door, helping her out with a gentleness that contradicted the violence humming beneath his skin. "Stay behind me," he murmured, then turned to face the cartel's men. The leader of the tactical team, a thick-necked man with a smirk that said he'd done this dozens of times, stepped forward. "This is private property undergoing legal seizure. You need to leave." Duyun's single word cut through the man's bluster like a knife. "Take your forged documents and your rental thugs and get off this land. Now." The leader laughed, a harsh sound that grated. "I don't know who you think you are, but we have court orders. You have forgeries." Duyun took a step forward, and something about the movement made the leader falter. "You have fabricated paperwork signed by judges who don't exist, filed through shell companies that my people traced back to your boss's offshore accounts. You have nothing legitimate, and you know it." "Bullshit. We have." Duyun's men emerged from their vehicles, and the change in atmosphere was immediate. These weren't hired security or ex-cops playing soldier. These were syndicate operatives, and even the cartel's tactical team recognized the difference. "You have 30 seconds to leave before this becomes a problem you can't solve with lawyers," Duyun said softly. "And trust me, you don't want that problem." "You're threatening us? We're operating within the law." "No, you're not." A new voice joined the conversation as a woman in an expensive suit approached, carrying a briefcase. "I'm attorney Sarah Drake, representing the Shin family interests. I have in my possession evidence of your organization's systematic fraud, including your personal involvement in the falsification of documents related to this property." She handed the tactical leader a folder. "These documents have been submitted to the FBI, the California Attorney General, and several federal judges who actually exist. Warrants for your arrest and the arrests of your employers are being processed as we speak." The leader's face went pale as he flipped through the papers. "So here's what's going to happen," Duyun continued, his voice never rising above conversational level. "You're going to take your men and leave. You're going to return any and all documents related to this property. And you're going to hope that I'm feeling merciful enough not to have my people visit you personally." The threat hung in the air, and Celine watched the tactical leader's Adam's apple bob as he swallowed hard. "Move out," he barked to his men. Within minutes, the property was clear, the cartel's attempted seizure dismantled with the surgical precision Duyun had promised. Celine's father stumbled forward, his face a mixture of relief and residual fear. "Mr. Shin, I don't know how to thank you. This vineyard, our family legacy." "Here." Duyun pulled an envelope from his jacket and handed it to her father. "The deed. Fully restored to James family ownership. The fraud has been documented and submitted to authorities. You won't be bothered again." Her father opened the envelope with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face as he stared at the document. This is everything. Our whole lives. I can't, how can we possibly repay you?" "You can't." Duyun's eyes slid to where Celine stood. "Your daughter is the only reason I'm here at all." Her father's expression shifted, calculation replacing gratitude so quickly it made Celine's stomach turn. Of course. Celine's staying with you, that's more than fair. Actually." He glanced at his wife. "We were thinking she should stay with you permanently. For safety, you understand. The cartel might." "The cartel is finished," Duyun interrupted, his tone cooling. "They won't trouble you again. What I'm offering is protection of a different kind. Still, having her under your protection, it makes sense. She should stay at your estate. We insist." Her mother stepped forward, dabbing at her eyes. "After what you've done for us, it's the least we can do." Celine watched her parents, the same parents who'd torn her away from Duyun 10 years ago because he wasn't good enough, now eagerly offering her to him like a prize because he'd proven powerful enough to save them. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. But more than anger, she felt a strange sense of clarity. She'd spent 10 years trying to be the daughter they wanted, trying to fit into the mold of respectability they'd crafted for her. And where had it gotten her? Engaged to a fraud, nearly ruined financially, forced to crawl back to the only person who'd ever truly seen her. Do-yoon had never asked her to be anything other than herself. He'd never wanted her to change or conform. He just wanted her. Actually, Celine heard herself say, stepping forward to stand beside Do-yoon, "I want to stay." Her parents beamed, but Do-yoon's hand found hers, squeezing gently. "Are you sure?" he murmured, low enough that only she could hear. "You don't have to." "I'm sure." She turned to look up at him, this dangerously beautiful man who'd fought for her, protected her, and given her back pieces of herself she'd lost. "I'm choosing this. Choosing you." Something shifted in his expression, surprise giving way to satisfaction, giving way to something deeper, more possessive. "Then let's go home," he said. Moving into the Shin estate had been temporary, a necessity born of crisis. But choosing to stay, that was something else entirely. Celine woke up the morning after the vineyard's reclamation with a sense of rightness she hadn't felt in years. The bedroom suite that had felt like a gilded cage now felt like sanctuary. The estate that had seemed foreign now felt like the place she was always meant to be. Do-yoon was waiting for her in the breakfast room, and the smile he gave her when she appeared was genuine and warm, the boy she'd once known peeking through the monster's exterior. "Good morning." He pulled out her chair personally. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in years." She accepted the coffee he poured, their fingers brushing in a way that sent sparks up her arm. "Thank you. For yesterday. For everything. I told you I'd get your dirt back." He settled across from her, his eyes tracking her every movement. "The James Vineyard is secure. Your parents' legacy is protected. And the cartel? Being systematically dismantled as we speak. By tomorrow, they'll be facing federal charges. By next week, they'll wish they'd never heard of Napa Valley." He took a sip of coffee. "You're safe, Celine. Completely." The certainty in his voice made something warm bloom in her chest. Over the following weeks, Do-yoon kept his promise to not cage her. Instead, he rebuilt her world with quiet, obsessive devotion. The tasting room became her sanctuary, and he filled it with rare vintages she'd only dreamed of accessing. He hired consultants to help her develop her skills further. He created opportunities for her to work with local wineries, using his influence to open doors that would have stayed closed. And every morning, they walked the grounds together. It became their ritual, dawn breaking over the valley, Do-yoon matching his long strides to her shorter ones, his hand finding hers automatically. He asked questions about wine, about her dreams, about the woman she wanted to become. And he listened like every word was sacred. "I'm rebuilding the West Wing," he mentioned one morning, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. "Thought you might want to design part of it. Your own space, exactly how you want it." "Do-yoon, you don't have to." "I want to." He stopped walking, turning to face her. "I want you to feel like this is your home, not just a place you're staying. I want you to put roots down here. With me." The vulnerability in his admission made her chest ache. "My parents have been visiting a lot," she said softly. "Suddenly they're very interested in my well-being." His jaw tightened. "They've seen what I'm capable of. Now they want to maintain the connection, make sure their daughter stays with the powerful man who can protect their interests." The hypocrisy is almost funny. Almost. He cupped her face, tilting her head up to meet his eyes. "But you're not staying for them, are you?" "No." She covered his hand with hers. "I'm staying for me. Because being here with you feels right in a way nothing has in 10 years. His eyes darkened with satisfaction and something deeper. "Good." That evening, he found her in the tasting room, analyzing a particularly complex Bordeaux. She didn't hear him approach, only felt his presence when his hands settled on her waist from behind. "What do you taste?" he murmured against her ear. She shivered at his proximity, at the heat of him pressed against her back. "Blackcurrant, tobacco, a hint of cedar. But there's something else, something I can't quite." "Here." He reached around her, bringing his own glass to her lips. "Try this. It's from the same vineyard, but aged differently." She sipped, aware of his arms caging her in, his chest solid against her back, his breath warm on her neck. The wine was exquisite, but all she could focus on was him. "Do-yoon." I need to tell you something. His grip on her tightened. I need you to understand what you're choosing when you choose me. She set down her glass and turned in his arms, looking up at him. I'm not a good man, Celine. The things I've done, the violence I've ordered, the lives I've destroyed, I'm exactly the monster your parents warned you about. I know. But with you. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb stroking her cheekbone. With you, I want to be better. Not because I can change what I am, but because you make me want to protect something good instead of just destroying threats. Her heart clenched. You can leave any time, he continued, his voice rough. I meant that. I won't stop you, won't chase you. If you decide this life isn't what you want, if you want to walk away from me and everything I represent, I'll let you go. She stared at him, this dangerously beautiful man who'd fought for her, protected her, rebuilt her world with patient devotion. This man who'd become a monster to survive, but who looked at her like she was salvation. I am home, she said quietly. His breath caught. I'm not staying because I have nowhere else to go. I'm not staying because my parents want me to or because you saved the vineyard. She reached up to trace the line of his jaw. I'm staying because the boy I fell for at 18 became a man I'm falling for at 28. I'm staying because when I'm with you, I remember who I am beneath all the trying to be respectable. His eyes blazed with intensity. I'm staying because I choose you, Duyun. The man you are now. The man you've always been beneath everything else. Celine. She rose on her toes and kissed him, pouring 10 years of regret and longing and choice into the contact. He responded instantly, his arms banding around her, lifting her against him as he took control of the kiss. It was claiming and consuming, a promise and a possession all at once. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. Bed, he growled. Now. I've waited long enough. Yes. She nipped at his lower lip. Show me. Show me everything. He carried her through the estate to his bedroom, not the guest suite she'd been using, but his own private sanctuary. The space was masculine and elegant, dominated by a massive bed that would comfortably fit his large frame. He set her down gently, and for a moment just looked at her, his eyes tracking over her face like he was memorizing the moment. This time, there was no hesitation. She went to him first. Her hands found his jacket, her forehead pressed briefly to his chest as if grounding herself in the truth of what she'd chosen. He exhaled slowly, one hand lifting to cradle the back of her head, not guiding, not claiming. Just there. Still with me? He asked. She smiled faintly. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't. That was when he pulled her closer. The kiss that followed was different, less restraint, more certainty. Not rushed, but fuller. He kissed her like someone who knew exactly what he was holding and had no intention of wasting the moment. She felt him everywhere without needing to see or name it, his presence, his strength, the way his body curved around hers like shelter instead of cage. They moved together in a slow, deliberate rhythm, learning each other again now that nothing was unspoken. There was no urgency. No performance. Only closeness. Only the quiet certainty of being met without being overtaken. Later, wrapped in his arms with her head on his chest, Celine traced the tattoos she'd been wanting to touch since she arrived. No regrets, he murmured. None. She pressed a kiss over his heart. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. His arms tightened around her, and she felt the rightness of it settle into her bones. The vow between them was mutual now, not a bargain or a price, but a choice that felt like destiny finally catching up. 1 year later, Celine stood on the balcony of the Shin estate, overlooking the valley as autumn painted the landscape in gold and amber. The James family vineyard was producing its most successful vintage in a century, but she wasn't the one selling it. She'd found her place here, in this strange intersection of luxury and danger, respectability and syndicate operations. She'd built her own consulting business, advising the region's top wineries, and the tasting room Duyun had created for her had become a destination for serious collectors. But more than professional success, she'd found something she'd been missing for 10 years herself. Strong arms wrapped around her from behind, and she smiled as Duyun's massive frame shielded her from the wind. His chin rested on top of her head, and she could feel the steady beat of his heart against her back. The grapes are ready for harvest, she murmured, watching workers move through the James vineyard in the distance. Let them wait. His lips brushed her temple, then traced down to her neck, finding that spot that always made her shiver. His grip on her waist tightened possessively. I've already waited 10 years for mine. I'm not sharing you with the work today. She laughed, turning in his arms. The ring on her finger caught the light, not gold of respectability but dark platinum inset with black diamonds, a design that was uniquely them. Syndicate metal shaped into a promise. My parents are coming for dinner tonight. I know. His eyes glinted with dark amusement. Your father wants to discuss a business proposition. Apparently marrying into the Shin family has made him an entrepreneur. The hypocrisy never ends. No. He cupped her face, thumb tracing her lower lip. But I don't care about them. I only care about this, me, the life we're building. She rose on her toes to kiss him, soft and sweet and full of promise. When she pulled back, his eyes had gone dark with want. You're mine, he murmured. My wife, my home, my reason for existing. And you're mine, she replied. My monster, my protector, my everything. He swept her up into his arms, carrying her back inside, and she laughed at the familiar possessiveness of the gesture. The delinquent boy had won. He hadn't just saved the vineyard, he'd become the only world Celine ever wanted to inhabit. And as he carried her to their bedroom, his lips claiming hers with fierce devotion, she knew she'd finally found where she belonged. In the arms of the monster who'd always seen her as his salvation. In the dangerous, beautiful life they'd chosen together. Home.